Kev, we started.
Yeah.
All right. It's
Okay.
it's
Okay. So the share is in for the refuah of Yehuda Yitzchak ben Miriam and other cholim.
Okay.
And continuing the theme of davening. Okay. So another issue is interrupting. Now I'm going to continue this. I'm going to get some more material, some more information about this. But one thing that I've got here is about interrupting with a blessing for talis and tefillin. So it says, if one davens at a minyan regularly and shachrit begins before the zman, before the time for talis and tefillin, and we're not as fast as the minyan, and they get up to Pesach. Or should we wait until Yishtabach and Baruch Hu? So the answer is to this question, the best course of action would be to begin Pesukah de Zimra with Hodu, that's the Sephardim. Okay, well, we would start with Baruch Shamar. And if this isn't practical, one should wait until after Yishtabach. Several poskim permit putting on talis and tefillin earlier, and one who does so has much to rely on. Now, you can't if you come too late, or you start off too far behind the guy that's davening chazan, then you'll never catch up. And I do it. That's what I do, because it's especially here in some shuls, they set a certain time for davening, like 45 minutes, maybe 50, and afterwards people need one of the shuls here that I go to, and so they give keys to everyone. But I do that, so it said you can do that, because otherwise, it's you'll never catch up if you are doing Pesukah de Zimra and still trying to catch up, and they already just before the Shema. You have to. That's another thing. Let's say you haven't reached Shmona Ezra. I'll finish with this. Let's say you haven't reached Shmona Ezra in the davening, and they're already far ahead, and they've started Shmona Ezra, and you're about to reach there. You finish the Shema, and you reach there, and some of the guys are finished, and they usually wait for 10 guys before the Chazar Tashatz. So what you can do, and again, Ian Smolovitz told me this, and Damon. How's this? So what you do is you wait till everyone's finished, and when the chazan starts a repetition, you're with him. You pretend that quietly. You pretend that you start the kedusha. You start and you say it with the chazan, and then you continue. Did you guys know that?
Yeah, I actually do that.
Do you do that, Damon?
Yeah.
If you're too far, if you'll never start on time, you're going to miss the kedusha because you're far behind. Rather wait till before you start just Shmona Ezra till they do the repetition, and start the repetition and do as if you're the chazan and say everything but quietly, and then continue.
Yeah, I do. When I do that, I pause to answer their kedusha. In other words, I do my own. I wait for the repetition, do it with them, and then stop and respond to their kedusha before proceeding.
Yeah. But I only do that, depends where they are in the Amidah. I don't do it if they're like halfway, then I just start.
I agree.
But if they right near the end, or you see that the chazan's finished, then you can rather wait.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right, guys, I just want to go through some things quickly with you. A little bit of Chazorah. So we learned in Agadic teaching yesterday. I just want to give you a bit of the flow of it. Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani said in the name of Rav Yonasan, tribulation visits the world only when the wicked are in the world, but it initiates upon the righteous first. As it says, if a fire shall go forth and find thorns, when does a fire, which is known as tribulation, go forth? When thorns, which is referring to the wicked, are available to it. But it initiates only with the righteous first, as it says in the name of the verse, and a stack of grain, meaning the group of the righteous, is consumed. And it doesn't say, and the fire consumes a stack of grain, but rather, and a stack of grain is consumed, meaning that the stack of grain is already consumed by the time the fire reaches the thorns. So what this is saying is that the first, even though it's not their fault, the righteous, the first almost casualties of the punishment before the righteous, before it hits the wicked. So there are two different reasons given. One of the reasons is famous, you know, from Pasha Noach, which means if the righteous had properly gotten the generation to do teshuvah, as you know, this wouldn't have happened. The other reason, as you remember, is that the righteous shouldn't have the pain of seeing other people suffer. So sometimes, like in the case of Enoch, his great-grandson would have been...
Hanoch, Damon.
Enoch, Hanoch, yeah. His great-grandson would have been an embarrassment to him. He was taken out of the world before certain punishments were meted out as a kindness to him. Gavin, the third reason given. Gavin, you typing something? Are you with me in the shoe?
Yeah, I am. I have to respond to this. Sorry, I'll be a second. I'll be 1 second.
So Damon, now Gavin was going to hear that. So you're saying that if something is decreed on the world and the righteous happen to be there, they won't be spared.
Not only will they not be spared, they'll be the first to be punished before the wicked. So we're going to see, is that fair? I mean, what does this mean? So there are three reasons given. Reason number one is that there is an opinion that they should have done something to improve the generation's level, because we learn a case where there were two famous Tanoim, I forget whom, where the lion ate somebody in the village, and the one never spoke to the other one for 3 days. We learned this in Sanhedrin. Why? Because he said it's your fault that a person died at the hands of a lion. It's such a freak accident that there's something wrong with the level of the people, and it's our fault. Well, it's your fault as leader of that particular community that such a travesty happened. Because if you'd been holding it the right level and gotten your generation of villagers to do what they needed to do, there wouldn't have been a case of somebody dying by a mauling of a lion. So there we learned that. We learned in the case of Noach, it's called the flood waters of Noach, because he's held semi-liable for not doing enough kiruv. All those righteous in his generation. This is a classic example. So there's that. There's also that second reason that the righteous are spared from seeing the pain of their fellow Jews dying as a kindness. And then the third reason is that sometimes the killing of a tzaddik wakes up the generation because he atones for their sins, even though he didn't do anything wrong. So those are the three reasons. So we learn it from a Gaddic work. What is a Gaddic? It means you have a morsel where it uses a literal term to convey a concept. So here it's saying that by the time the fire reaches the thorns, meaning the wicked people, and the fire being the tribulation, it hits the stack of grain first. So this is an analogy to it. So now the Gemara is going to cite a brisa with a related thing. Rav Yosef taught in a brisa, what is the meaning of that which is written in regard to the night the firstborn of Egypt was struck dead? And as for you, the Jews, you shall not leave the entrance of the house until morning. So why were the Jews not permitted to go out into the Egyptian night? The reason is that once the force of destruction has been given authority to wreak damage, it won't distinguish between the righteous and the wicked. So then the Jews would have been endangered if they had emerged from their homes. Now, the thing of it is Stephen Herr has just gotten onto the group, but I can't attend his share at the moment because of our reception. And let me just allow both Arthur and Stephen back.
And Arthur's disappeared. Arthur's probably going to rejoin. Just I just want to get some more to hold for me.
Sure. Where did you go?
No, the sound disappeared. So
No,
I
no
just
problem.
disconnected.
Makes sense. Just waiting for
No,
Steve.
just like you were talking and there was nothing coming out of your mouth and it was my side.
No problem.
So I just restarted. I left. I came back. Jeez, my back
Hi,
is sore.
Stephen. Nice to see
Good,
you.
then you're up. Yes, okay, thank you.
Good, man. Listen, please, God,
Ma'am, Tati.
next, I'm still in Tati. Not next week, but the week after, I'll be able to attend your Pasha share, which I'm looking forward to. I do enjoy it.
Thank you. I was telling me last night. Thank you.
And the
Thanks.
guys will tell you the hassles we've had with the internet here in Tati. They'll tell you it hasn't been pleasant. So,
Sure.
joining anyway. So just to fill you in, Stephen, is that we learn that the righteous die before the wicked, even though the wicked have caused tribulation to come to the world. Meaning that if there were no wicked people, there wouldn't be things such as COVID, HIV, plagues, famine, drought.
And Arthur and Stephen, can you just set off your background? Just mute yourself. Sorry, it's just a hell of a noise from one of you. I don't know who's doing it, but
Okay, it's off.
thank you, guys. Sorry.
All right, so what we're saying is that if there are no evil people, there'd be no reason to strike out punishments. So just to catch Arthur and Stephen up, is that the righteous are the first to be punished. 3 reasons given. The first reason is the righteous should have stopped the wicked from sinning by doing kiruv, by setting an example, by nipping the problem in the bud. The second reason is that the righteous should not have to go through the pain of the generation suffering. So it's a kindness to them. And the third reason is that sometimes the righteous sacrifice themselves because the merit of one righteous person is worth maybe thousands of normal people. And therefore, by sacrificing themselves, they avoid tragedy to thousands of people. And it gets the generation to get a fright and wake up. And also, when the tzaddik of that generation dies, sometimes the generation isn't worthy of having such a tzaddik. And therefore, they no longer merit having that tzaddik in the world. You should know that. So it was quite a worrying thing. I remember Rav Simcha said in the beginning of COVID, there were many of the Gedolei Yisrael that passed away. And we should be very frightened when such a thing happens, that we're no longer worthy of people at that level. It's a frightening thing.
Sure.
So, yeah, so now what's going to be discussed?
I think my late mothers were just passed before that.
Exactly. So
My late mothers were dying like a week into it.
100%. So we just learned, Stephen, that Rav Yosef taught in the Brisa. What's the meaning of that which is written in regard to night of the firstborn of Egypt that was struck dead? If you remember, it said it in the Chumash in Shemot chapter 12, verse 22. And it said, and as for you, you shall not leave the entrance of the house until morning. So why were the Jews not permitted to go out into the Egyptian night? The reason is that once the force of destruction has been given authority to wreak damage, it will not discern between the righteous and the wicked. So the Jews would have been endangered if they had emerged from their homes. But then there's a question that arises that we hit yesterday. I started discussing it with Gavin, and then we obviously finished our 40 minutes. So Gav, don't interject at the moment, but I will raise your question. Is that, well, the question is asked by the Gemara, and then Gavin gave an answer, which he can with pleasure, and then I will give 1 or 2 answers to that. So the questions asked is that the issue of the Jews leaving Egypt was preceded by killing of the firstborn. So if you want to say that the Jews were not allowed to go out of their homes at night, it makes sense when there's a destructive force in the world like Sodom, where Hashem sends a malach, because once that destructive force is there, it doesn't distinguish between Lot, Lot's wife, anybody, and that's why Abraham had to go and rescue Lot, because the malachim were just following instructions. Yeah, Stephen, I want to ask you, who took the Jews, who killed the firstborn? Stephen?
Hello?
Yeah, Stephen, who killed the firstborn?
Well, Hashem did it for an angel. Eh?
Exactly. No, Hashem did it himself. And what's the proof of that? I'll just read it to you. It says in the Pesach Haggadah, I, Hashem, will pass through the land of Egypt on that night. I and no angel.
No,
I
no.
will slay all the firstborns in the land of Egypt. I and no seraph, and I and no messenger. I, Hashem. It is I and no other. So, in other words,
Just we told the blood on the door in place, so that's it. An angel, you know,
correct. And the point, the answer, the question is that Hashem is all powerful. It's not like somebody following instructions. He can discern who's righteous and who's wicked. So in this particular case, which is the only one in history, why would the Jews have to be indoors at night? And Gavin had one or two answers which he can give now, and then I will address those issues. Gavin?
Yeah, I was better last night. So what is the question now? You want to know why they had to go indoors, eh? So
No, I'm saying
that's right,
that's not the question. Let's just reframe the question again. Any other case in history?
Yeah, just rephrase it.
Any other case in history, it would make sense because Hashem lets a destructive force into the world, and we know from the case of Abraham and Sodom, who had to rescue Lot. If Lot had stayed there, he would have died. It didn't distinguish the fact that Lot wasn't tzaddik, by the way. He was living in Abraham's household. In other words, if a righteous person and an evil person both jump off a building, Stephen, what do you think is going to happen to the righteous person, like the evil person, if they jump off a building? If they both jump off a building?
Yeah, Steve. Oh, there we go. Now you're back. Okay.
You're back. I was about to call you. I don't want to talk for too long.
Stephen? This is
When you frozen, can you?
I know.
frozen stuff.
I know this is the problem that I've got with in Imams and Tatu. It's nothing I can do. I'm sorry, guys. So, Stephen, what I'm saying is as follows. I'm asking you a question. If a righteous person and a wicked person both jump off a building, what would happen to the righteous person compared to the wicked?
But jump building. They'd be punished for this committing suicide.
Yes, but I mean, what would happen to their bodies?
Straight up, I presume. Eh?
No,
Somebody's talking
I
about
would reckon that they would both equally go splat. And that's what we're talking about, the force of destruction, is that gravity doesn't discern between righteous and wicked. There's certain laws that Hashem put in the world that if you ignore it, like two objects occupying the same space at the same time, like a truck and a car, it doesn't discern. It will damage both. Gravity doesn't discern. Spiritual impediments, well, physical impediments like floods, tsunamis, plagues, they don't discern. So in the case where Hashem releases that into the world, a righteous person, it says in Gemara Brochas, has to be just as careful as a wicked person. It says it in the 5th daf. But what I'm trying to say,
like a ship in the ship, right?
Correct. What I'm trying to say here is here's an exception that the Gemara brings because Hashem himself killed the firstborn of Egypt, and Hashem, unlike the destructive force that he releases, is able to discern between righteous and wicked. So why would the Jews have to stay indoors while this destruction was taking place? That's the question, because Hashem's got the ability to supersede instructions. He sets the instructions.
Yeah.
Okay, Kabb, you want to give an answer or two?
Locked up.
Yeah. Gav, you want to give an answer or two that you gave yesterday?
Yeah, but what's the exact
It's kind of like when this plague first started, we were like locked up, weren't you?
Gav, are you missing the question? I'm not hearing you correctly. Can you just speak louder?
That's all I've got to use. Just what's the direct question, and I'll give you the answer. Sorry, I'm not sure what you actually want, because you seem to have covered most of it. Just give me the question, and then I'll.
I'm asking you, in this case, the Gemara is asking the question, and it says, in every other case of history, we understand, because a destructive force is released, and you're not going to be spared if you're righteous. If you're in harm's way, you're going to get harmed. In this case, Hashem himself did the did the task. Therefore, why would the Jews have to hide indoors as though there was some indiscriminate destructive force when Hashem discriminates and judges very accurately?
Okay, so yeah, okay, so that's the question. Thank you. You probably said it, I missed it. All right, so the answer to that, well, the answer that I gave yesterday, I don't know if it's a complete thing, but is the fact that you have no idea where you're holding with Hashem. So you might not be such a tzaddik like you think. They were also at the 49th level of Tumah, so I don't think there were many tzaddikim amongst this generation, or definitely amongst this generation. So when you're really at that Tumah level, I wouldn't go outside, put it this way. So that's the one thing. And then the fact that it's a malach or it's Hashem, I don't think it really makes much of a difference, because a malach can determine it as well. You know, the fact, this is why I said even more so, if Hashem's doing it, I think I said it the wrong way around last night. I'm not sure which way the Bava Kamma goes, because it can go both ways in a way, sort of thing, I think. Because if a malach is going to wipe you out, then even more so maybe Hashem. Is that what you were saying?
No,
I'm saying it the other way around.
Completely the opposite. You've given 3 points. Let's address your 3 points. Your 2 first points are spot on accurate. The third one is a bit of a problem. Let's address the problem, and then we'll answer it from your first 2 points. We'll use your first 2 points to answer your last problem. So you were saying that in a case, you were having the Bava Kamma the other way around, because you were saying if the angels are able to discern, even more so Hashem, which just explain your last point of your Bava Kamma, because it's opposite way around to the one given.
No, in theory, a malach can do it. A malach can discern. If Hashem decides to send them out with the capabilities of discerning, they'll discern. So whatever Hashem decides to do, they'll do. So
okay, so are you saying, let me just see if I understand you correctly. You're saying that since Hashem gives us the instructions, he might as well just give out an instruction that just discern before you wreak havoc, because they would follow those instructions to a T. And since it's not Hashem's will that the malach discern, it's neither Hashem's will either, because that's a good point.
So no, I don't think it's exactly what I said, but that is a good point.
Okay, what I'm trying to derive the diamond from the coals here with you. So just clear where I'm wrong.
Look, just bottom line. Normally you would think that if it's Hashem doing it, that Hashem obviously can discern 100%, and therefore it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense that you have to go hide inside. It makes more sense when a malach goes out, because you got no idea what instruction is sent to a malach, and if it's a malach that is specifically the angel of death, then he's going to wipe out everybody, you know. So yes. In this particular, but I do want to point out something. The firstborn were killed. What was the blood that was put on the door? Was that for the firstborn, or was that for one of the other plagues?
Firstborn.
Firstborn.
So it's related. Okay. So the blood was put on outside. That also wasn't necessary at all, because Hashem knows exactly who's a Jew and who's not.
Excellent. Stop there. Stop there. That's a brilliant point. Just hang on. You brought up 4 good points. Just give me a sec.
No problem.
So the reason you've answered it 3 different ways with 3 valid points, but your Bava Kamma was confused. But the only gem out of it was that Bava Kamma is saying that if Hashem gave the instruction to discern, they would discern the Malachim as well. So therefore Hashem didn't care to discern when he released a force of destruction. It was a unilateral command. So let's just address 3 issues. The first one, as far as the blood of the firstborn, what happened is, can you imagine, Stephen, Arthur, you go in the middle of Iran, okay, and you take the Quran and you decide to, Hashem says you need to take the Quran and you need to put, let's not say Hashem said it, I don't want to say anything wrong to Hashem. Just say there was a instruction that in order to test your faith with God, you would have to take these Muslim fanatics, the most religious book, and defecate in that book, or put feces on it, and then throw it in the streets, and make sure you're going to get saved by a miracle. That's a huge test of Imunah. So this was the test that they had. What happened was they slaughtered the sheep, the rams, and it was the Egyptian god. If you look at the month of Aries, which is why the Jewish people were redeemed in Aries, where the Egyptian forces were at its stronger, Hashem had said he has mastery even over the zodiac sign, and over a period where the Egyptians are known to be at their strongest because they worship the month of Aries, the ram, etc. So imagine taking their god, keeping it tied up where they're making sounds, and then taking that blood and putting it on the door. So one of the reasons is that's a test of Imunah, to know that you truly believe in Hashem before you get redeemed, being saved and taken out of Egypt. But you still don't want to be lynched on the street. So it's a good idea to stay indoors, because even if Hashem discerned and doesn't kill a Jew that's righteous, people can. People are not bulletproof or arrow-proof. So therefore, they could be turned on by their fellow Egyptians. So Gavin brought that up as a great point, because that was one of the dangers. That's number one. Number two is that the Jews were on the 49th level of Tumah. At that stage, they didn't have more merits than the Egyptians, because the Malach of the Egyptians said at the Red Sea, why would you drown the Egyptians in it and save the Jews? What level are the Jews holding it that's so much better than the Egyptians? So they didn't really have the same level of spirituality that would have saved them, perhaps, at the time that they'd been giving mitzvahs from Hashem, like bris milah, separating meat from milk, etc. They hadn't developed that. They were rescued from Egypt because they were on such a low level. They had to be rescued, otherwise they would have self-destructed spiritually. The world would have ceased to have been. So that was the reason, is that how can you say that they necessarily would have been saved in righteousness? Okay, that was Gavin's other point. And the first point is that who's to say that a person can be that arrogant when people are dying around him, to say that he merits to be so righteous that he can outlive them all, because he's got no sins that would tarnish him, and that he would be protected because of his level of morality and his adherence to mitzvahs. Do you get what I'm saying? So Gavin brought up all those good points. The only issue I'd like to correct is that kol v'chomer, because as far as that kol v'chomer is concerned, Hashem, unlike Malach, can supersede din, because it says that Hashem, it mentions this in Yom Kippur, Hashem can go from the seat, the throne of righteousness, the throne of judgment of din, and sit on the throne of rachamim. Is that, in other words, when you go to the next world, that there's your accusing angels, etc., but that Hashem can at any point decide to have mercy, at which the angels have got no instruction to do other than the standard will of Hashem. They have to carry out due process. Like, even if they can technically discern between righteous and evil, they've got no autonomy nor authority to do so. And therefore the question was arisen in the Gemara, but we have answered it. Also, the one thing of it is at night, there is an issue in Psalms 104, verse 20, which is, in the night creep all the beasts of the wild. The Israelites were told to stay indoors to protect themselves from the injurious spiritual and physical forces that routinely render the night dangerous. Okay. Also, this is an interesting commentary, that the forces of destruction were a natural consequence of the huge numbers of corpses lying in Egypt. Remember, there were a whole lot of plagues. apart from the firstborn. There were carcasses of animals, there were decaying flesh, etc. There were diseases. So therefore, you cannot expose yourself to disease. That was a point that was brought forward, by the way.
Can I just explain? Sorry, I didn't. I just want to explain my Bava Kamma part.
Sure.
I didn't hear 100% because my understanding is that if Hashem is not going to discern who you are, then why would and that's the only time that it's ever happened. The rest of time it's always been a malach. So even more so, you got to be careful of a malach.
Yeah, but Gavin, that's not the issue. That's obvious. I mean, that's already displayed. The question here was the opposite, is that we understand in the case of a malach why you have to be careful because he follows instructions and his job is not to put people on trial, but to dispatch the judgment of Hashem. He's a dispatcher of judgment. What we're saying here, Hashem struck the firstborn himself. So you're missing it. Your Bava Kamma doesn't hold it.
No, I'm not saying my Bava Kamma holds. I'm just giving my argument. I'm not saying it's a strong Bava Kamma. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Listen, another thing is the other thing that I raised yesterday, which I thought was a good point, is that it's a very good life lesson to see that when either when a malach sent or if Hashem goes in himself, don't mess with the system. We know, like I mean, I gave an example yesterday of COVID, where there were quite a few people, tzaddikim and all that running around, all huddled together, and a lot of people got wiped out. A lot of fun people already.
So I want to bring up your point there. There was a bit of confusion. I'll tell you where the confusion lay. Is that Jewish people have always addressed problems in the physical world by saying this: the source to every physical problem is a spiritual solution. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. In other words,
yes, I do.
Every physical problem is a spiritual problem. Every physical punishment has its solution or its cure in the spiritual, always. So what the confusing part is, and I just want to clarify this, is that the Jewish people have always learned that there's power in davening in a minyan, because if you're not righteous, we see our fellow Jews as righteous. And therefore, your prayers are more likely to be answered in the affirmative if you're not standing alone in judgment before Hashem, but beseeching him with the support, union, and achdut of other Jews. Hashem loves it when Jews work together, daven together, learn together. And therefore, throughout history, our solution to spiritual problems has been prayer, togetherness, and togetherness in prayer. Remember, the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because we thought we were better than our fellow Jew. There was, we were criticizing of somebody else's learning, we're doing a better job than they're doing, etc. The fact that when we see the Tselem Elokim, the divine in other Jews, and see another Jew as having perhaps more merit than us, and us working together will have our prayers answered more when we're praying for the other, with the other, as opposed to praying on our own, has been always a spiritual solution to problems like plagues, etc. So this has been a bit baffling for us.
Is it like Avat Yisrael that can rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, please, God?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we see the confusing part is, it seems that sort of achdut created itself problems of infections and deaths. So what do you do when you've got a secular mindset of looking at it from a biological perspective and a medical perspective of saying, you cannot have Jews together, they have to quarantine for their safety, and yet it contravenes or seems to contradict everything we've learned spiritually about achdut in prayer being a way to resolve some of the hardships that we've had over history. It's a difficult one when you've got a secular mindset fighting a spiritual mindset, and it's they're giving conflicting messages. I'm just suggesting, Gavin, it is an issue.
Yeah, but I want to give you, I'll give you another one. All right, so we got this whole spiritual thing, which I agree with you. But if you go stand in the middle of and go daven mincha in the middle of the M1 highway, in the middle of major traffic, you're going to get killed. So there is a very strong physical element that you can't ignore. You know what you were talking about.
No. But what I'm saying is the very specific spiritual remedy to the physical ailment has always been achdut in prayer. It's not like standing in the highway where that's idiocy, where you're going to get killed. We're talking about the fact that Hashem has always told the Jewish people that you've got to unite and you've got to work together in prayer and cooperation. So it's a bit different to standing in a highway and endangering yourself. The trick question is that when do the leaders of the generation come to the point where they had warned people that don't be so religious, when in fact the medical evidence is showing you that it's not the right solution? In other words, the problem here was misinterpreting the right sort of solution and not taking into account that maybe at this stage Hashem wants us not to daven together and to feel the loss of the socialization of our fellow Jew, and to appreciate what it's like to have social interaction and company and developed a little bit of that love. Because, you know, there's a country in Western song that says, how will I miss you if you don't go away? I'm just saying, is that sometimes somebody's got to leave you a little bit to you to appreciate that loss. Others are waving.
That's it. Abstinence makes the heart grow fonder. Huh?
Exactly, and then abstinence absence makes the heart grow fonder. Abstinence, I'm not sure, does. It makes you crave the person more, but at least absence makes the heart